I have been making a journal of sorts with Facebook for some time now. There's a part of your feed that usually happens in the morning that's kind of a reminder of years past. It's called Facebook Memories, and it's basically what happened on this date a year ago, and whether it be a definition, a picture, a quote, just a small part of my consciousness. I don't even know how to put it, but I started yesterday to write a post about this time in my life 10 years ago. And this time in my life 10 years ago, I was going through a really heavy time. My ex-wife, the mother of my children, my two biological children, was going through cancer treatment, and it had ceased to work. She had been in treatment down in South Texas for a few months. I believe she found out like October, November of 2009. And they gave her the option of a double mastectomy and radiation and chemo. Initially, she thought that she was going to do the mastectomy and that she would do the traditional treatment options. Through the course of her research and her trying to figure out what she needed to do for her, she decided to opt for a treatment that was experimental and not backed by the FDA. Therefore, she couldn't do it in the United States. She had to drive across the border into Mexico daily to get various kinds of medication, and she opted not to get a mastectomy. The treatment did not work, and she had a very severe kind of breast cancer, a very deadly kind. It didn't manifest itself in a below the surface tumor. It created a surface tumor. I mean, I say that it wasn't actually a tumor per se. It just, the whole breast tissue got hard. It looked like a giant sore. It was very quick, very fast moving, and I tried to communicate with her every day while she was going through that. And the last few weeks, I would call, and her mother had driven down there to be with her to help her out. And she got to the point where she couldn't answer the phone, and I was upset with her because I wanted her to talk with the kids, and I guess maybe even I wanted to talk to her and see how she was doing. And it was difficult for me to not know what was going on. I guess mostly because I was in denial about the whole situation. I really, in all honesty, never thought that it would be something that would take her from all of us. I never did. So the last few weeks, I would call, the kids wanted to talk to her, etc. And her mom would answer the phone and says she's not feeling well, so I'll tell her you call, maybe try again tomorrow. And I did. And eventually she got to a point where she was not doing well. And at that point, they knew something, and her mom typical mom, was not ever considering the possibility that her baby was going to not pull through this. So she never at any point allowed that idea to creep into her head, or at least she didn't verbalize it ever. And so she had to come home, and she was so sick at that point that she had to take an ambulance from Del Rio, Texas to her house. Cost her, I believe, like $1,200 or $1,000 or something like that. And fortunately, we had a benefit for her before she left, so she had some extra money for the things that she needed while she was gone. This treatment was expensive. I don't know all the details of that part, but so when she got to her house, she had to call another ambulance, and they took her to the hospital. Well, by the time she got there, it was really late, so I came the next day. I left work and came to visit her, and I was not prepared for what I saw. Not ever could I have imagined what happened when I walked into that room. So I walked in. She was emaciated. She was blind because of medication, or I don't even know. She weighed maybe 80 pounds. She had a yeast infection in her mouth because of all the medication that she was on. So her throat was swollen. She could barely talk. She didn't even know I was there until her mom said that hey, sis, Pete's here. And she was on so much pain medication that she really couldn't communicate. She said some stuff, and that was cool. But when I saw that Gloria had been there for all night and hadn't slept, and I just told her that maybe you need to get out of here for a second, go down and get some coffee, run to her house, take a shower, just get out of here for a second. And at this point, I didn't realize that her sister was even in the room, because I was hyper focused on how she looked and what was actually happening. And as soon as her mom left the room, Sky stood up and said, "Hey sis, Pete's here. Do you have anything that you want to tell him?" And I was so fucking mad, because this is something that was going to take her from us all, and they had already accepted that. And I, 10 years later, still have not accepted it, so not fully, but I said, "Hey sis, is there anything that you want to tell Pete?" And she commenced telling me that she loved me, that she's glad that the kids have me, and at this point, me and Amanda were still together, and that she was grateful that Amanda would be in the kids' life, that she liked her. She told me where to take her ashes, and she told me that she had found God and that she wasn't worried about where she was going from there. And like I said, I was so pissed off that they were giving up. But in hindsight, there is no way you could recover from that. It had ravaged her body. She didn't have the ability to eat anymore, and she was dying. So, I left and went back to work and came after work and picked up the kids, Abigail and Elvis, and took them to the hospital. And I set Elvis down on the bed, and she just had, at this point, I didn't even realize that we were on the hospice ward. I didn't realize that because I wasn't looking around, and I noticed that all of a sudden, it was like a slap in the face. All of a sudden, I realized that she was on minimal life support. That's not the word, but like she only had an IV in. There were no machines in there. There was no oxygen in there. It was basically an IV for pain medication. And I started looking around and I saw things about the chaplain and services to help with funeral and expenses and shit like that. And I was like, I didn't realize where I was. So at that point, I did. And Elvis was really confused. He was 3 years old. He was just sitting on the... He was sitting on the bed, holding her hand. And Abigail was standing on the other side, and you could see the fear in their eyes. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what the fuck was up. And they had like this smile on their face, but it was like a scared smile. And she was talking to them, but she wasn't really coherent. She was just saying, I love you, Buggy, and Big Easy, you're my boy, and all that kind of stuff. Just the nicknames that she'd given. She always gave somebody nicknames. She always gave people nicknames, and it was Big Easy, or Big Elvis, and Abigail was her Buggy, her ladybug. So, for whatever reason, I made the decision at that point to take them into the room. It was like a little area like with coffee and tables and shit. And I took them in that room so that I could tell them what was happening and that their mother wasn't doing good and that she was not going to make it through this and that she was going to pass away soon. I remember parts of that conversation like it happened today, and other parts of it are gone from my memory because of the intensity of that emotion to tell your children that the woman that they know as their mom and the woman that I had given my life to was going to die. That was the most difficult shit I've ever done. So we went back into the room, spent a little more time there, and she was in and out of consciousness. She was on so much morphine, she really didn't make much sense. And I would have stayed there longer had I known that that was going to be the last day that we talked to her. That was on the 24th of April. That's why a lot of the times I'll celebrate that day, because it was the last day that we all were in the same room and talking, and took them home, and they were with Amanda, and I came back to the hospital and hung out with her mom a little bit, and went home and came back the next day, and she was in a coma. At that point, it was pretty much over. It was just a matter of her deciding when it was time to go. She waited for all of us to be there before she started transitioning, and the day after that, she passed away. That situation in my life has had probably the most impact of any other single situation, time, than anything else in my life. It affects me and my relationships and the people that I trust with love, so much so that from that point on, I was very scared to love any woman, and I was even more scared to receive love from a woman, because if I loved a woman and she loved me, then I could go through this again, and I was not trying to go through that again. I wasn't going to put myself in a situation where I opened up my heart in that way and had the potentiality of it to all come crashing down again. So I became a person that I'm most ashamed of, and I hurt people in my life because I was hurt. I cheated and lied and manipulated because I guess I wanted people to hurt like I hurt, and I didn't want anybody to love me. I didn't feel worthy of that love, and I wasn't going to allow it to happen. So I hurt people and lied to people and did horrible things because I was destroyed. I was left with 2 kids, confused and afraid, and sad. And I'm in a situation in my life right now where it's all come to a head. 10 years later, it manifested itself in so many different ways, from how I interact with my friends, to me becoming sober, to me stopping doing everything negative, from smoking to drugs to all of that shit. I parts of my life I tried to change in a positive way, and other parts of my life, like the subconscious levels, I just allowed them to take over, and it was a protection measure, which is understandable, but I wasn't protecting myself. I was hurting other people. And you can go through that shit and come out on the other side with some relative peace if you view it in a way, I mean, there has to be a silver lining. There has to be. You have to find that. And like I've said before, I'm finally going through therapy for this and other things that have happened in my life, but I can't allow myself to be that man anymore, that hurt man. I have to stand up for myself, protect myself, but also love again. And allow myself to be happy and not punish myself anymore. I'm in a situation where I have to rebuild myself and remember who I was before all of this happened, and focus on those parts and grow those parts and eradicate that shit head fucker that thought it was a good idea to hurt people or to protect himself through hurting people. I'm not that fucking guy, and I'm ashamed that I ever even became him. But the bright side is, I see the error of my ways, and I'm gonna correct it. And today, I can allow happiness into my heart, and I know that I deserve it, and I'm coming for it. I hope everybody has a kick-ass Saturday. I hope that if you're hurt or broken, you take some time to go inside yourself and ask why. And go inside yourself and say, what can I do to make this better? Because for as much pain as you go through, there's the other side of that coin, and there's that much pleasure. You can enjoy this place. You can reap the benefits of a healthy life. Everybody dies. Everybody fucking dies. It's a matter of time and how. So don't fucking get caught up in the win. Don't get caught up in the... Get caught up in the journey. Get caught up in the A to B, not the fucking end. Enjoy the journey, because if you're so focused on the end, it's never gonna be a positive life for you. And so I hope everybody has a killer day. And thanks for listening.